Angles ABC and CDF are congruent to each other, we now have to prove that line segments BD and CE are perpendicular to each other. So the first thing we can say, knowing that E is the midpoint of BD, is BE and DE are congruent to each other because a midpoint divides a segment into two congruent segments. We can also say that CE is congruent to itself because of reflexive property. We can also say that CBE and CBA are supplementary to each other because if two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. We can say the same thing about CDE and CDF. We can also say that CDE and CBE are congruent to each other because if two angles are supplements of the same angle, then they are congruent. We can also say that CD is congruent to CB, and the reason for that is in the triangle, sides opposite of congruent angles are congruent. We have enough information to say that CBE is congruent to CDE, and the reason for that is side angle side. We can now say that CEB and CED are congruent to each other because they are corresponding to each other. We now have enough information to prove that BD is perpendicular to CE. And the reason for that is if two lines form a linear pair of congruent angles, then the lines are perpendicular. And there we go.